friend of mine used to have a bumper sticker on his car that read, "Militant Agnostic. I don't know, and you don't either." I'm sure there are some militant agnostics in here. I am myself, more often than I'd like to admit, a militant agnostic. I try to be open and flexible, but it's such a challenge to stay with the experience of uncertainty for very long. In the story I told earlier about the two teachers and tea, a professor goes to meet with a respected Zen master. The professor knows a lot of things, but he doesn't know what's going on with the tea or with the Zen master who isn't saying anything. Not knowing what's going on makes the professor very anxious, so he tries to cover over some of the uncertainty and his discomfort with a torrent of words, with all the things he knows. My own version of this story is slightly different, but the moral is the same. When I was a senior in college, I took an elective in Buddhist philosophy. At the end of the semester, the professor offered to take some of us to a Zen monastery for a 3-day silent retreat. I loved the class, so I decided to go. I had never done anything remotely like this before. Our professor had prepared us for some of the rules and formalities of a Zen center, so I followed along easily enough, except for this one thing. Every retreatant had to go for dokusan with the Zen master. Some of you know what that is, I can tell by the laughter. In Japanese, dokusan means going alone to a respected one. The dokusan session is a private interview between master and student, a chance to discuss teachings and practice. And in the Zen tradition, these interviews are often highly ritualized. The student enters a certain way and bows a certain number of times before speaking begins. So there I was, not even legal drinking age, brand new to Buddhist practice, facing the prospect of meeting face-to-face alone with a well-respected Zen master. I was terrified. I memorized the ritual steps and came up with a question that I hoped was sufficiently humble, yet also deep enough to merit a Zen master's time and attention. When it was my turn for dokusan, I entered a small room where the master was seated on a dais, silent and still. I awkwardly did the prescribed number of bows, blurted out my question, received a cryptic reply, thanked him, and got the heck out of there. I couldn't escape fast enough. I honestly have no idea what my question was, because it meant nothing to me. I was simply trying to ask the right kind of question, the kind of question a good Zen student might ask. And when I asked it, I realized how obviously inauthentic it was. Like the professor in the story, I didn't know how to show up ready to learn. Unlike the professor, whose cup was too full, mine was basically empty. I knew very little, but I was so ashamed of having an empty cup and so preoccupied with trying to pretend that it was fuller than it was that I missed the opportunity for even a drop of tea. Not knowing, being uncertain is uncomfortable for many of us. In this age of information, which is also rapidly becoming an age of misinformation, it seems our whole society is growing less comfortable with uncertainty, less willing to face the unknown, to leave space in our cups. And this is becoming a big problem for us because we are awash in uncertainty. So many unprecedented changes happening so fast on so many intersecting levels: social, political, ecological, technological. We have more information at our fingertips than we've ever had before, but this doesn't seem to be helping us cope with the existential realities of uncertainty, wide-scale disruption, and change. After my dokusan experience, I decided Zen was too formal or maybe just too intimidating for me, but I am inspired by Zen teachings. which have a way of going straight to the heart of things. One of the Zen Buddhist concepts that I hold close is Shoshin, beginner's mind. This concept was popularized in the West by Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, who was the founder of the San Francisco Zen Center. Beginner's mind refers to a mental orientation that is open, flexible, curious, and ready. Suzuki Roshi describes it this way: in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's, there are few. Practicing with beginner's mind means putting aside assumptions and judgments in order to be fully present. It requires humility and trust. In this practice, one embraces not knowing and uncertainty instead of pushing them away. With beginner's mind, one approaches every experience with plenty of room in their cup. So as we embark on a new shared ministry here at UUCSR, I think it's worthwhile to reflect on the experience of beginning and on this idea of beginner's mind as a practice. What are the habitual ways we each approach beginning something new? How do we, individually and together, want to approach this new beginning here at UUCSR? And more generally, what might we learn about beginning that can help us grow spiritually and emotionally and collectively? There are so many ways to approach beginnings. Some of us, when facing something new, put on our game face and push right in, armed with everything we think we know, like that professor. Others hang back, hoping not to make fools of ourselves. Some of us seek to avoid new beginnings entirely. Others try to predict what might happen and plan every detail down to the T. And most of us do a fair amount of projecting and fantasizing, telling ourselves stories about what the new experience might be like, what we want to happen, what could go wrong, and how we and others should be for things to turn out okay. What's your most common approach to beginning? I think I have tried all of these approaches over the course of my life. The one I learned to do as a young adult and certainly got the most external rewards for was predict, plan, and prepare. It sounds very reasonable and wise, doesn't it? In general, preparation is reasonable and wise, but sometimes our predictions and plans prevent us from seeing what is actually going on, prevent us from being open and flexible. Sometimes we fill our cups so full of predictions and preparations, there is no room for possibility, no room for precisely those things that I think we want to cultivate in religious community: humility, wonder, authenticity, faith, wisdom. I grew up in a non-religious household, but I've always been curious about religion. For years, I pursued my interest by studying religion. I didn't know any other way in. I listened to lots of professors, read lots of books, tried to fill my cup with knowledge. Remember, I had that thing about having an empty cup. I really thought it should be full, and I worked hard to fill it. The problem was that the more I learned about religion, the more I realized how little I knew, how little I would ever know, which of course is a sign that I was finally getting a little bit of wisdom. But my confidence in the amount that I knew about religion was inversely proportional to the number of years I studied it. Eventually, I realized it wasn't really knowledge so much I was after anyway. It was wisdom. I wanted to know how to live wisely, fully, authentically. I wanted to know how to be brave enough to become the person I yearned to be, to speak my truth, to love boldly, to live in the world with my mind and heart fully open, to engage in transformation with others. I didn't just want to study those things. I wanted to practice them, to live them in community. And this required a big shift for me. I had to go from studying to doing. The shift from studying to doing required faith, which is not something that I was brought up with. Faith is something I have developed over time. Approaching new situations with an open and ready mind, relaxing in the face of uncertainty, requires faith. Not faith in something or someone in particular necessarily, but faith that we are part of something larger than ourselves. Faith that who we are right now, exactly as we are, is just right for taking the next step. Faith that it's not only okay to not know, to feel uncertain, to need help, but that it's exactly as it should be, because it means we're awake. We're ready to meet life as it actually is. We're ready to begin. Suzuki Roshi says that wisdom is the readiness of the mind. It isn't about what or how much is in the mind, but rather the state of the mind, how it orients toward experience. One of the costs of the modern preoccupation with knowledge and information is that it can prevent us from developing wisdom. And as we hurtle into a sci-fi future that often feels dystopian, I find that worrisome. Wisdom for me is about the quality of our responses, not the quantity of information we possess or the speed of our reactions. Wisdom entails humility, knowing that we often don't know, and that not knowing is not in itself a problem. It's what we do with the not knowing, how we relate to it, that matters. Wonder is the beginning of wisdom. The ancient Greek philosopher Socrates is credited with saying, wonder, being curious, showing up for life as it unfolds with room in our cups. Like Joe learned to do with his mother, not assuming he knows everything about her already, but instead being open and curious about who and how she was now, in this moment, with him. And I have no doubt that Joe's mother felt the difference, just as Joe did, in the quality of their relationship. There's a Zen koan that says, not knowing is most intimate. And I think that story that Joe told about his mother demonstrates that. Not knowing is most intimate. What would it be like if we brought that same sense of wonder and open-mindedness to all of our relationships, to our own selves? What if we brought it here to UUCSR, to the world? Moving away from an orientation of knowing or acquiring or mastery to one of curiosity and spaciousness, of beginning anew. It sounds nice, doesn't it? But it's not easy. As Joe said, life is hard. Beginner's mind, it doesn't come naturally to most of us, and that's why it's a practice. Over the past 2 weeks of increasing political polarization and violence, I've been reflecting on just how hard it is for most of us to accept uncertainty, especially when we're under duress. Consider the ferocity with which both sides of the political divide pointed fingers and circulated unsubstantiated claims about who killed Charlie Kirk and why, when none of us knew. Both sides did it. I did it. Even though I knew I might later regret it, I still did it. We are so upset and angry and afraid. We long for certainty and an end to the chaos, and we want so desperately to get things right for ourselves and future generations. There is so much at stake. A dear Christian colleague of mine said this past week, "I'm not righteous enough to be self-righteous." This colleague is a highly respected public leader. In my mind, she's pretty much as righteous as they come. But she's right. Who among us is righteous enough to be self-righteous? Who among us is that pure, that above the fray? Who among us has claim to that kind of certainty? Definitely not me. And I guess that's where my militant agnosticism comes in. I don't think any of us are above the fray. We don't all bear the same responsibility for the mess we're in, and that's important. But we're all in the mess together. thrashing about in the rapidly accelerating currents of uncertainty and change, unsure what lies ahead for us and future generations. These are not easy times to live in, and that's why I am so grateful for this religious community, for Unitarian Universalism. Unitarian Universalism doesn't offer certainty, but it does offer support for living our values with others who share them. It does offer support for facing uncertainty with an open mind and heart, for showing up with courage in these times, willing to participate in shaping an unknown future in the direction of collective thriving. I think this is critical right now, my friends, that we offer not the promise of certainty, but the promise of supporting one another to live our values in the midst of uncertainty, to help each other return to those values again and again in the face of fear, hatred, violence, chaos, and change. That we offer not an expectation to always be right or morally perfect, but a shared promise to help each other begin again in a spirit of transforming love. So as we begin this new shared ministry, I invite us to embrace the experience of beginning as a fruitful orientation, even a spiritual practice. Because in an important sense, we are all beginners here. No matter how long we've been part of this community or any other congregation, this is a new time in our nation and world. And the landscape of congregational life and ministry is changing rapidly too. What has worked in the past may no longer work now. And in that sense, we're all new to this. Let's take a breath together. What is Buddhism? Asked Suzuki Roshi rhetorically. I don't know, I just practice meditation, he says. I love this, and I also relate to it. What is ministry? I know what it is, and yet I also don't know. And I hope that's not just because I'm still relatively new at it. I hope I will always be able to say honestly, I know what ministry is, and I also don't know. It's something I practice in community. It's something we practice in community. Our shared ministry here at UUCSR won't always seem as new to us as it does right now, but I hope we hold on to the freshness of it. I hope we are always able to say to each other and to say honestly, I know you, and I also don't know you. Tell me about yourself. What is it like for you today? Tell me about this place, this community. What is it like now? And what does it want to become? Who do we want to become? And how can we support that becoming? I hope we will tend reverently to our cups as if they are sacred ritual implements, which they are. I hope we will take care to make sure there is always enough space in our cups for more tea. If we can do this, my friends, I know that whatever else is happening, we can and will go on.